I get your name close?
You got it perfect.
Oh, well, that's a first. Thank you.
It sounds just like it's spelled. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Darcy Etcheverry. My grandparents, Helen and Pedro, were raised on Kenai Lake, and they instilled a love of Alaska and its bountiful resources on their children. Excuse me, sorry, I'm nervous. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Like many Alaskans, throughout the year I spend time with my family hunting and gathering fish, game, berries, and other wild plants. And each year we make some time for sheep hunting. Some years we're able to plan for week-long hunts or longer. Other years we're only able to put in a long weekend. So that's who I am. I'm not speaking to you as the most knowledgeable sheep biologist in the universe, or as an AC member, or even as someone who has spoken to this board in the past. But I do appreciate the opportunity to provide input as someone who has not been very involved in the process. I'm going to speak briefly on two issues today. The first is Proposal 90, and the second are the sheep allocation issues. I oppose Proposal 90, and it's my understanding that there's been a lot of testimony on this subject, so I'll keep it brief. But I believe that livestock producers, they are Alaskans, and they're involved, or they're interested in the conservation of the resource, but to implement this proposal and cause strong restrictions for them, I think, is wrong without involving them in the process. People that should be involved include the Division of Agriculture, the Farm Bureau, and a group of producers, and it shouldn't just come from the Wild Sheep Foundation. And along that note, I heard it mentioned yesterday that the representative from the Wild Sheep Foundation thought that the Division of Agriculture should be the lead agency on that, and that they should maybe pay for the testing. And as you all know, our state budget is in major crisis, and they're in the position of having to cut back some of their vital programs 30% or more. So I really don't think they're in a position to do that. The second issue I would like to speak to is sheep allocation. I think it's important to see a resident preference for sheep harvest. A 90-10 rate has been suggested, and I would support that. I'm less interested in seeing changes to resident start dates. The head start is what some people have been calling it. Some people have framed this as a fight between a few grumpy residents and guides, but I don't think it has to be thought of that way. It's a value and principle issue that could potentially provide for less crowding and future conservation of this resource for Alaskans. It's been requested through the proposal process for many years, and subsequently through a survey and a working group. It's my understanding that the working group was unable to come to a consensus, but I think from my limited understanding is that's probably based more on the process of how that working group was put together than the actual issues at hand. I mean, come on, this is sheep in Alaska. We should be able to come to a consensus. There was a comment yesterday that working groups were not useful and the board should use the AC tools that they already have. I have to disagree with that, because it seems to me that the ACs are dealing with so many issues that a working group has the opportunity to focus on a specific issue and dedicate more time than would be possible in the AC process. Unfortunately, it seems that the working group will not be considered a success. I'm not an expert planner or facilitator, but I have to question why so many people were invited to participate in the group. Was it a case of trying to include everybody to the detriment of the product? It's also my understanding that several Board of Game members sat on the working group, and I think that the board should remove itself from that process. If the working group is able to come to consensus, then I think the board should accept the outcome without being present to potentially inadvertently sway the process. So yes, a resident preference for sheep hunting is being requested now. I would argue that this conversation could carry over to other game resources in the future as our human populations grow. So let's address it now and apply the process to other species in the future as needed. Thank you.
Darcy, very good. You did that all before your 5 minutes was up. So
yeah, I hope I didn't talk too fast.
No, it was very good, very well done. Nate?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Darcy, for coming and sharing your thoughts. And I think we have some loose connections. We almost had dinner together the other night, but it didn't
I know
quite
your
work.
wife.
So if I don't get this right, I'm in big trouble with my wife. Is that what you're telling me?
No.
I can answer a couple of your questions. I was the chair of the working group subcommittee that established the working group and then also participated in the working group. The reason there were so many members is there's so many different viewpoints on Dall sheep. We have a variety of ACs that have regional viewpoints independent of one another. There's a lot of shared values between ACs, but there's also local concerns. So we opened it up first to every AC in Alaska. If you have sheep in your area of interest and you want to participate, you're welcome. I think there was 11, if I remember right, ACs automatically. There's some groups in Alaska that focus on wildlife issues. They're NGOs. They've been involved in wildlife issues for decades, and they're always available to the board, presenting ideas over the years. We thought it appropriate to make sure that they were invited as well. We established, we made sure that there was several seats available for just trying to capture the unrepresented public, because some had expressed to the board that they weren't participating in the ACs and they weren't part of NGOs, but where's our voice, so we made opportunity for them. And the goal was to make sure that that no one at the end could say they weren't heard, because that's something we hear at this board often on this topic. You're not doing what we say, or you're not listening to us. And we wanted to make sure that anyone that felt that way had opportunity to sit at the table with the board of game and the ACs and explore every option, whatever direction the mission of the group was. Everything's on the table. What do you want to talk about? Let's go where you will. But we brought the public into the board and AC process, and that's why the board was on the working group as well. So.
Okay.
Darcy, one more thing about that process. There were actually 5 board members that attended every meeting. Member Sager, Alvar, and I attended each one of the meetings. And one of the things that was very noticeable is the board members that were on the subcommittee played a minor role when it came to discussions and leading conversations and so forth. They were there, as a committee, but they were primarily there just to kind of listen and not lead the process. So I hope that answers some of your concern about the board being there driving the bus. We didn't drive the bus.
Well, I wasn't concerned so much that the board was driving the bus or leading the process, but again, they're that inadvertently swaying, or and if a group is put together to come to consensus, I would think that the board could read the minutes or read through the drafts as they came out. But that's just my opinion, and there's different ways to plan. So. Okay.
Any other comments? Oh, Nate.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, that you just reminded me of another of the goals of the working group. There were several goals that we were hoping to accomplish. One of them was also that there had been, and there still is, frustration mentioned that with the board and the board processes, and why we did a board generated proposal, for example, or proposal 207, or and this was also an attempt to make ourselves completely available for open dialogue, which we're prevented to do normally in this setting. This is limited to a degree. Like for now, for example, I'm supposed to be asking you a question, but I'm actually telling you something. And at any rate, it was a good question, and I wanted to answer it. But it was another way to make ourselves available and to be held accountable. So.
Any other questions? Darcy, thank you.